ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मीलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः. Today I'm going to read the book Srila Prabhupada's Lilamrita, chapter 16. You have heard that one must accept the spiritual master after careful examination, just as one selects a bride or a bridegroom after careful examination. In India, they are very careful because the marriage of boys and girls takes place under the guidance of the parents. So the parents very carefully see to it. Similarly, one has to accept the spiritual master. It is necessary. According to Vedic injunctions, everyone should have a spiritual master. Perhaps you have seen a sacred thread. We have got sacred thread, Mr. Cohen. You have seen sacred thread? Prabhupada pauses. His audience has not noted the thin white cords he wears beneath his shirt across the upper part of his body. For thousands of years, Brahmanas in India have worn such threads, placed diagonally across the torso, looped over the left shoulder, and down to the right waist. A Brahmana holds his thread in his right hand while chanting the sacred Gayatri mantra 3 times a day. But this is all strange indeed to Americans. Prabhupada himself is exotic to them. His great chadra wrapped around his shoulders, he sits cross-legged and erect on a thin pillow, and they sit facing him on the other side of his trunk, which now serves as a desk and lectern. They are close together in the narrowness of the room. He is frail and small and foreign to them, yet somehow he is completely assured in a way that has nothing to do with being a foreigner in New York. Visitors sense his strong presence. Two white lines of clay run neatly vertical on his forehead. His pale peach clothes are gathered in loose folds around his body. He pauses only a few seconds to inquire whether they have seen a sacred thread. That sacred thread is a sign that a person has a spiritual master. Here, of course, there is no such distinction, but according to the Hindu system, a married girl also has some sign so that people can understand that the girl is married. She wears a red mark so that others may know that she is married. And according to the division in the hair, what is this line called? Man part. Prabhupada. Man part. Prabhupada. What is the spelling? Man part. Prabhupada. Part. This parting also has some meaning. They know English and he knows the Gita, but he knows a good deal of English, whereas they know practically nothing of the Gita, which he has not which he has to spoon feed to them. But occasionally he asks their help in English vocabulary. When the part is in the middle, then the girl has her husband and she's coming from a respectable family. And if the part is here, then she is a prostitute. With a slight gesture, he raises his hand towards, but never really reaching his head. Yet somehow the half gesture clearly indicates a part on the side of the head. And then again, when a girl is well dressed, it should be understood that she has her husband at home, and when she is not well dressed, it is to be understood that her husband is away from home. You see, and a widow's dress. There are so many symptoms. So, similarly, the sacred thread is a sign that a person has accepted a spiritual master, just as the red mark symbolizes that a girl has a husband. Although his audience may be momentarily enamored by what appears to be a description of Indian social customs, a careful listener can grasp the greater context of Prabhupada's speech. Everyone must accept a spiritual master. It's a heavy topic for a casual audience. What is the need of taking a spiritual master? Isn't this just for India? But he says everyone should have a spiritual master. What is a spiritual master anyway? Maybe he means that accepting a spiritual master is just another culture item from Hinduism, like the thread, or the part in a woman's hair, or the widow's dress. The audience can easily regard his discussion as a kind of cultural exposition, just as one comfortably watches a film about the living habits of people in a foreign land, although one has no intention of adopting these habits as one's own. The Swami is wearing one of those threads on his body, but that's for Hindus, and it doesn't mean that Americans should wear them. But these Hindus' beliefs are interesting. Actually, Prabhupada has no motive but to present the absolute truth as ha- he has heard it in disciplinic succession. But if anyone in that railroad car shaped room were to ask himself, should I surrender to a spiritual master? He would be confronted by the existential presence of a genuine guru. One is free to regard his talk as one likes. In every step of one's life, the spiritual master guides. Now, to give such guidance, a spiritual master should also be a very perfect man. Otherwise, how can he guide? Now, here Arjuna knows that Sri Krishna is the perfect person, so therefore is accepting him. Shishyaste ham sadi mam tvam pravanam. Sanskrit, no one knows a word of it, but there is never any question for Srila Prabhupada. Even if they don't understand it, the transcendental sound of Shastra will purify them. It is his authority and he cannot omit it. And even at first impression, it presents an air of scholarly authority, the original, the foreign words of the sages. I am just surrendering unto you, and you accept me as your disciple. Arjuna says, friendly talks cannot make a solution to perplexity. Friendly talks may be going on for years together, but no solution. So here, Arjuna accepts Krishna as a spiritual master. This means that whatever Krishna will dictate, he has to accept. One cannot deny the orders of the spiritual master. Therefore, one has to select a spiritual master by whose orders one will not commit a mistake. Suppose you accept the wrong person as spiritual master and he guides you wrongly, then your whole life is void. So one has to accept a spiritual master whose guidance will make one's life perfect. That is a relationship between spiritual master and disciple. It is not a formality, it is a great responsibility both for the disciple and for the spiritual master. And yes, student, but if the disciple is in ignorance before, Prabhupada, yes, Prabhupada acknowledges a serious question. It is for answering question like this from disciple in ignorance that he has left retirement in India and come to America. Student, how does he know which master to choose? Because he doesn't have the knowledge to make a wise decision. Prabhupada, yes. So the first thing is that one should be searching after a spiritual master, just as you search after some school. You must at least have some preliminary knowledge of what a school is. You can't search for a school and go to a clothes shop if you are so ignorant that you do not know what is school and what is a clothes shop. Then it is very difficult for you. You must know at least what a school is. So the knowledge is like this. Tad vijnanartham sagurum eva vigachade samitpaniha srotyam Brahmanishtam. According to this verse, the spiritual master, we say, is required for a person who is inquisitive about transcendental knowledge. There's another verse in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Tasmat Guru Prapedyata Vijnasu Shreyam Uttamam. One should search after a spiritual master if one is inquisitive about transcendental subjects, unless one is at least conversant with preliminary knowledge of transcendental matters. How can he inquire from the spiritual master?
You can summarize, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So today, um, reading Prabhupada was getting more and more American audiences for his class, which he does like 3 times a week, his classes. Prabhupada's sacred thread, the way he sit in Padmasanam, his attire, his tilak, everything was new to the American audience. Though many listeners were initially coming to hear Prabhupada's lecture to have a glimpse on Indian culture or customs, then slowly they are very interested in Prabhupada's the lecture as well as his the way he lives. Then Prabhupada urged them to get a spiritual master who is genuine to resolve life's deepest confusion, fixed in truth, who can give guidance. Then Prabhupada is saying that spiritual master should be chosen in the same way we choose bride or groom for marriage so that the life will be much easier. The Sanskrit and philosophy were foreign to Americans, but Prabhupada presented them as it is because of its purifying power. Um, we can see that Prabhupada was a messenger of absolute truth, hoping to awaken